It's Monday, so it's time to continue the Game of Thrones rewrite. Welcome to the newest episode of SDW.
Super Dario World!
It's a me,
Dario!
Woohoo! Let's go!
So I had a very busy weekend. I went out and did Bombed, which went great. Thank you for all of you who voted. I really appreciate it. I ended up going to a new spot, which was really cool, down in South Park. Thank you for all of you who came out, too, and who played in the game. It was great. It was really fun. I think you're really going to enjoy it when we play tomorrow. And I got a few left over for another week, for another time, so we'll see. We'll see when those are played. Also, happy Father's Day to everybody listening. I'm not a father, but I have one, so happy Father's Day to you, Dad, and happy Father's Day to all of you listening. You know, I know it was yesterday, but still, it counts, okay? It fucking counts. I don't care. Anyway, yeah, busy weekend. It went great. A friend of mine that joined me decided that she wanted to try to hook up with the girl, so I spent a pretty big chunk of my night trying to find a good girl for her, which is honestly the best use of my time I've ever done. It's great. It was... I was gonna make it happen. I had an objective, and I was going to complete it. Now it was weird. In the end, it didn't really work out because I don't even remember. I drank too much. It was doing Bombed is a trip, man. It's a trip. It takes its toll. I need a break. But it was fun. And like I said, I had my first objective, which was to do Bombed, and it was super easy thanks to the P1s that came out. And then I had the next objective, which was to find a girl for my friend. And that one, actually, some of the P1s that came out started helping out. Everybody started joining in. It was like a game for everybody. They wanted everybody to join. Everybody wanted to make this happen. It was hysterical. Anyway, so good times. Good times. Next time I do it, I will keep informing you if any of you wants to show up. Great. I've already got a great suggestions for other places I could do it. So this is good. I'm just gonna keep doing it this way because you just make my life way easier than it was. So okay, that's enough for that. Let me just give you a quick reminder that the show is officially on the iHeartRadio app. You can find it by typing in the show presents Super Dario World, and you can also find it on SoundCloud, YouTube, and iTunes by typing in Super Dario World Podcast. Super easy. Any comments, questions, or suggestions? You can find me at Dario the Show on Instagram. Like I said, sometimes I put a poll. So I put a poll on where I should go to do Bombed, and South Park won. Got a lot of votes, and I actually kind of fucked up because it turns out that Facebook and Instagram keep their numbers separate. So I have it so that when I post anything on Instagram, it also goes to Facebook. However, I don't use Facebook that much. I don't like it. I wish I could get rid of it, but the calendar thing that reminds you when somebody's birthday is just way too valuable. It's basically the only reason why I keep it, and also for a football group that I keep there with my family. So I still need it just for those things, but if I could, I'd get rid of it. Anyway, what was I even saying? Yeah. So it turns out that the poll that goes up on Instagram and the poll that goes up on Facebook keep the numbers separate. So on Facebook, Downtown won, and on Instagram, freaking South Park won. So I had to go in and just add up all the numbers, and just it came out really close. There was a difference of like 3 votes, of like 51% to 49%. It was super close. And I had a lot of people upset at me who voted on Facebook. Like, dude, no, I saw the last thing I checked and Facebook was winning, blah, blah. So that's what happened. It was on Facebook, I think it won by like 67%. The thing is that way less people voted on Facebook. And I mean way, way less people. So I just took all those votes and added them to the other total and then did my own math. At the end, it was South Park that won by a very small, tiny margin, but still, it was the winner. So, gotta give the people what they want, right? And I actually ended up going to a really cool spot. What was its name? It's called Whistle Stop down in South Park, and apparently every other Saturday they have events called the Booty Basement, where they play, basically it's all 80s and 90s hip-hop, which was awesome. It was great. The vibe was fantastic. It wasn't too crowded. And it wasn't too stuffy. It also wasn't too expensive. The only knock I have on it is that they don't take credit cards. I don't know if that was a thing for that night or if it's a thing in general. But yeah, that's the only thing that I could say that that was not going to cool. Everything else was awesome. Like, legit awesome. I highly recommend that spot. But okay.
I will take what is mine with fire and
so let's start off with a quick recap. For those of you who don't know, the Game of Thrones rewrite is something that I'm doing because I was pissed off that Game of Thrones did not make any sense towards its final seasons, so I'm trying to fix that. Also because the last season and the ending completely sucked. So I had a lot of people asking me like, dude, how would you have ended it? What would you have done differently? And my answer was always, dude, I would have changed things from way, way back. They're like, okay, like what? And so it was those conversations that brought this up, and now I'm doing a Game of Thrones rewrite. So the moment where the Game of Thrones rewrite is going to start, it'll be at the beginning of Season 7, because those two last seasons, Season 7 and Season 8, were garbage. So that's where I decided to start things. However, there are still a few things from previous seasons that I would have liked to have fixed. So during these setup episodes, on the first episode, I set up the North. On the second episode, I set up pretty much the Seven Kingdoms. And what I did was I just modified one or two little things from the show to make things make a little bit more sense, and leading up all the way to the end of Season 6. So it would still start on Season 7. I'm just doing a slight one or two minor or major modifications to the story. Now, one of the rules that I kept is that I'm not going to introduce any new characters. It's all going to be characters that already existed in the world, because I know that there's too many characters, it gets too complicated. There's too many plots and it got too complicated. So if on TV it's hard to follow for some people, I'm guessing that on audio you're going to be completely lost. So I'm trying my best to keep it simple, and that's why I chose at the ending of Season 6, which is where they kill off a whole bunch of storylines. They killed off the Dorner storyline, they killed off the Tyrell storyline, they killed off the Sparrow storyline. So I figured it'd be way easier, and I'm trying to make it in a way that makes a little bit more sense for the audience, or that it makes more sense for the story. So here's a quick recap of where everybody is and the minor changes I did. If you want more details, you can go back to the podcast where I did them. I believe they were episode 37 and 42. I think they're really good, so I highly recommend that. Okay, so for Jon Snow, he was resurrected in a way that made sense. The Battle of the Bastards made sense. And also he has a personality change, which is very important because he was fucking killed. And he came back and he changed in no freaking way. Anyway, so he's on his way from Winterfell to the Wall, because that's where you fight the fucking dead. So he's going back to the Wall, and he's bringing a few select Vale soldiers to take them out ranging so they can see the zombies, and they can come back and report to the rest of the Vale Lords, hey, yeah, there's zombies out there. You don't just have to take that undead dude's word for it. They're real. Anyway, that's Jon. Bran, he's on his way to Castle Black from beyond the Wall, and however, he did not have the vision of the Tower of Joy because it was stupid. Sansa, she is currently in Winterfell, running things, trying to set everything up, trying to get them food for the winter, because they're going to fucking starve. Even if the zombies don't get them, they'll starve to death. And she's kind of in Littlefinger's pocket because she fucked up, and that's why she got captured. She got captured in a way that made sense. Anyway, Littlefinger is in Winterfell, kind of cementing his own forces there and cementing his plans, which nobody still really knows exactly what they are, only Littlefinger. Theon, he is currently the prisoner of Sansa in Winterfell, because that whole just letting him leave was dumb, and reaching the King's Moot was dumb. So when Theon helps us release Sansa, he stays with Sansa, and so under Sansa's protection, she's still been, but everybody kind of hates him, so now he's technically has to be under the protection of the Vale Lords, which kind of puts him in Littlefinger's pocket. Anyway, the point is he never went to the fucking Iron Islands. That was stupid. Anyway, next. Davos, he was sent to Dragonstone by Jon because Stannis told Sam that there was dragonglass in Dragonstone. So Davos, who knows Dragonstone and is a smuggler, was sent by Jon to Dragonstone to try to collect as much as he could, because Dragonstone was currently under siege by Loras Tyrell. Well, it's not under siege. It was currently blockaded by Loras Tyrell because the Lannisters wanted to recover Dragonstone because it's right across from the fucking bay where King's Landing is. So it's kind of a very important military position. Anyway, so since it was being blockaded by Tyrell and the Tyrell forces, Davos thought, all right, I'll just sneak in, I'll smuggle as much as I can out, blah, blah, no big deal. However, since Marjorie Tyrell got arrested, Loras Tyrell became a hothead. Like, I gotta get the fuck out of here. I gotta take this island as quickly as possible, and so I can go back and save my sister. So he sieges Dragonstone, and he takes it. So the Lannisters control it, or the Tyrells. Well, the Lannisters control it. However, he does get killed in the process. So that's how Loras Tyrell dies. He never got fucking arrested by the priest. That was stupid. The Sparrows arresting Loras Tyrell. Ridiculous. Anyway, and so Davos has to report back that, hey, yeah, I could never get all this. So basically, Davos was not able to smuggle anything from Dragonstone because it was taken by the Lannisters before he could go in and get the rest of Stannis' people who were still in the castle. Anyway, moving on. Sam, he never stole his father's sword. His brother Dickon is way younger. It made no sense that his younger brother was way older than he was. And he arrives at the Citadel with pretty much no issues. The big thing is that he never steals fucking Heartsbane. It's ridiculous. It was the dumbest thing in Sam's storyline, and he has a lot of dumb things. Anyway, after that, Brienne, if you guys remember, she traveled to the Riverlands, and she tries to get the Blackfish. The Blackfish was in Riverrun. In Riverrun, if you guys remember, Catelyn Stark's uncle, known as the Blackfish, he was holding Riverrun, and it was under siege by the Lannisters. So what Jaime Lannister did was he releases Edmure Tully, who was the uncle who gets ridiculed at the final episode of Game of Thrones by Sansa, and so he releases him in order for him to get the castle back. Anyway, so Brienne actually convinces the Blackfish to join Sansa in Winterfell, and they sneak out with a few forces before they completely are taken over by the Lannisters. Okay? For Cersei, we have that she finds a way to blame the bombing of the Sept. What's the name? The Sept of Baelor, which is, where they killed all the Sparrows, where they killed off all the Tyrells. They killed off everybody and their mother in that, when they made the church explode. The church explode. I think that would be the equivalent. So she finds a way of convincing people or spreading rumors that bombing was actually caused by the Targaryens, because there's rumors of Daenerys having dragons out all the way in the east. But there was also rumors that the Mad King Aerys Targaryen, he had stashes of wildfire throughout the city. So that thing explodes, goes up in flames, and Cersei, with Qyburn's help and some of her pyromancers. By the way, the pyromancers are the guys who make the wildfire. Anyway, they were able to contain the wildfire and kind of stop the tragedy from happening. So she makes it look like it starts the rumors that it was Daenerys' fault, or the Targaryens' fault in general, that happened, that it was an attack, or that it could have been an attack. But, however, due to her people and for her actions, everybody was saved. The city was saved from being completely taken over by wildfire, because if you guys remember, there's nothing that can put out wildfire unless you know how, or sand. Basically, you need sand because water doesn't put it out. Anyway, so that's how that happens with Cersei. However, that does lead to the death of Tommen, who ends up killing himself the same way, and so that causes her to kind of start losing it a little bit. She gets a little bit more paranoid, because if you guys remember in the show, Cersei's only redeeming quality was that she loved her children, and now her actions that led her to being the queen. So she manages to become the queen and gets everything she's ever wanted, power-wise, but it costs her her family. So it costs her the thing that she loved the most. It was kind of like Thanos. Like, did you do it? Yes. What did it cost you? Everything. And I know that's not how it goes. I fucked up the first line. Doesn't really matter. Anyway, so she's kind of starting to get a little bit crazier and more paranoid. And so Jaime, since Cersei did not tell Jaime her plan, and Jaime asks her point blank if it was her, and she says no. So now Jaime knows that she's lying to him, and so he's starting to look at her a different way. He cost her all his children, and she cost him all his children, and now he's starting to kind of not trust Cersei anymore. So there's been a break in their relationship, right? So for the Brotherhood Without Banners, which you guys remember were Beric Dondarrion and Thoros Emir, basically the guy that came back from the dead and fought with a fire sword. Anyway, they still catch up with the Hound. However, the way that they get the Hound to join them is because they were also they've been caught up. Well, Melisandre had caught up with them. So after Melisandre helps bring Jon back to life, Davos still demands that she gets sent away, or that she gets murdered or exiled. And so Jon is like, well, she just brought me back to life, so just pretty much get out of here, because you killed the little girl. And so Melisandre says, okay, I'll go out and I'll spread the word that you are the reborn. I'll start spreading the message that you are Azor Ahai, all that shit. And Jon is like, yeah, whatever. Just if you can bring us people, cool, because we need people. So Melisandre's going around spreading the word, and she's looking for other Red Priests. Ergo, Thoros of Myr, the guy with the fire sword, who's also Red Priest. And that's when they meet up with the Hound. And so the way that Melisandre convinces Thoros of Myr that Jon Snow is Azor Ahai is that she explains that he was reborn or resurrected in a way that's prophetic. I won't get into it too much, but the way that they convince the Hound is they force him. Well, Melisandre kind of convinces him in a forceful way to actually look at the flames for once, and that's when he gets to see the undead in the flames. So it turns out that Sandor Clegane actually has an ability to see visions in the flames. The problem is that he's afraid of fire. But however, he's a very powerful empath. Whatever, doesn't really matter. That's how they convince him, and that's how she convinces the Brotherhood Without Banners to head on north. For Yara, that is Theon's sister, Yara Greyjoy. Like I said, Theon never makes it to the Iron Islands. So during the King's Moot, which is when they voted who the next king's going to be, she loses, and she runs away before Euron can get to her, because Euron knows that if he kills her, then there's pretty much no competition for anything. So Yara escapes, and she's not really sure what to do. Then she remembers that there's a rule in the King's Moot that if there was an available candidate that never showed up, they could redo a King's Moot. So since Theon wasn't there, and technically Theon is the rightful heir of Balon, his father, then he should have been there. So Yara realizes, if I go get Theon, if I find a way to rescue Theon, then we could redo the King's Moot and screw over Euron. So she's on the way to try to find Theon. And that's where everybody is in kind of that side of the world, the Seven Kingdoms, well, most of the Seven Kingdoms and the North, which is part of the Seven Kingdoms. I know, I get it. And so that's pretty much how things stand. If you want more details, like I said, go back and listen to my previous podcast. I go into it deep. I enjoy going deep into things. But I do explain a little bit more, because I know sometimes it's really hard to follow. Who was this person? Who was that person? And I try to give you reminders. But okay, that's it. That's it for those parts of the story. Let's move on to the rest of the world. So I'm going to get kind of like the simpler one out of the way. The first one is Arya. I've had a lot of issues with Arya's story. A lot. Particularly when she got stabbed multiple times, falls into a river filled with dirty water, and somehow doesn't get infected, somehow runs across the city, somehow finds an actress who was also a nurse, who, by the way, a nurse would have gotten paid way more than an actress at that particular point in time, and she manages to rescue her. It made no sense. Like, Khal Drogo died from a cut nipple and that thing getting infected, but no. Arya jumping into sewer water, basically, because, back then people just threw all their feces into the water. But no, she's perfectly fine. No infection, no nothing. And also, an expert assassin stabs you in a place where you're not going to die. And also, you saved yourself by an actress knowing how to perform surgery, apparently, advanced surgery. And I've had issues with Arya, okay? However, how do you manage to bring Arya back into Westeros? Because it has to end. That season ended with Arya returning. So here's a few things that I would have done differently. First off, I hated that they never really explained how the whole faceless men thing works. Because if you just watch this show, you think, oh, well, she can just turn into anybody, right? If she kills somebody, cuts off their face, then she can turn into anybody, right? I think that's too much BS. And if that's how that works, then they did not take advantage of that power at all. Killing Cersei would have been super easy. Super easy. Just, kill one of her maids. Take her face. And then when you're next to her and she's alone, shank. Dead. So they never really took advantage of that, which was stupid. So I would have made it that while she was in the House of Black and White, if they're going to train her to become an assassin, then they should have explained how the powers worked. Now, in the books, it is hinted at, again, it's never really explained, or it hasn't been explained yet, but it's hinted at that it's more of a glamoring thing than actually transforming into somebody, or than actually taking somebody's face. So, for example, let me explain a little. A glamour would be kind of like a psychic manipulation or like a mirage. So if I put on somebody else, if I kill somebody and put on their face, I would look really creepy, kind of like Hannibal Lecter, right? However, if I am glamoring you while I have somebody else's face on for you to think that I look like him, so I'm manipulating your mind. It's not really that I have the face on, it's that I'm manipulating your mind a little for you to think that I look that way, then that makes a little bit more sense. So, also, another big thing, in the books, Arya is a warg. Just like, by the way, wargs are people who can go into animals, and in the books, Arya frequently dreams about going into Nymeria and doing things. So Nymeria was her direwolf, by the way. So she clearly has some kind of psychic ability, and that's why she was selected by the House of Black and White, because they're like, oh, this chick's a warg. She has powers. Just like Jon has powers. Just like Bran has powers. And it was hinted at that other Stark characters had powers, but I won't get into that too much. It doesn't really make sense. So the point is she has a psychic bloodline. So what they explained to her in the House of Black and White is that when they blinded her, it was to kind of open her third eye. You know how Bran opened his third eye? Well, Bran was way more powerful than she was. So Arya, they woken that ability in her as well. It helped her open up her sixth sense. Basically, it opened up her sixth sense, which made her slightly more powerful psychically in that sense. And they trained her, or they explained that basically you put on somebody's face and then you glamour the people that you're seeing. So it's kind of a process. So it's limited. It has its limits. The problem that I had with the show is that it didn't really have any limits. Here, it would have limits. For example, if you're speaking to one person, then the glamour will probably work. It would be ideal. But if that person knows the person they're talking to, then it becomes slightly harder if you prolong the conversation. Because when somebody like who's close to you says something in a way that you're like, oh, that was weird, or like, oh, they're hiding something. Like, oh, people get hunches. Everybody has that sixth sense where you're like, oh, that felt right. That conversation felt weird. So if it's somebody who knows the person you're pretending to be really well, then you can't prolong that conversation for too long because the odds of you getting caught are higher. Also, if you're talking to more than one person, then you have to spread your glamoring out a lot more, which makes it more difficult. Also, you kind of want to pick somebody who is around your body type. For example, if Arya is a 5'0" girl, she's not going to pretend to be a 7 foot tall hound, right? She's not going to pretend to be the hound. It would never work. The glamoring might help up to a certain point, but it's not that powerful. Okay. Oh, I just thought of it. A perfect example of a glamour. You know Melisandre? You know how when she takes off her necklace, she's an old lady, but when she puts it on, she's like a super hot young woman. That's a glamour. So the necklace that she has helps glamour everybody, but she has a magical element that helps her expand her power. Arya doesn't have that. What they use is they use somebody's face, and they use that to kind of glamour people. Does that make sense? So the face that they take off, it's kind of the essence, and that's how they glamour people. I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions, you can always find me at Dario the Show. Comments, questions, suggestions. I can go into a further explanation of it. Anyway, the point is that Arya would actually get trained in the use of that psychic ability. It's not the thing that bothered me is that they never really taught Arya how to do anything in the House of Black and White. So I would actually have them teaching Arya stuff. Okay? She just cleaned dead bodies, and then she just fought somebody with a stick while she was blind. They never really taught her anything. It was more like, oh, she taught herself. And that doesn't make sense. So the change I would have had with Arya is that she would have been trained somewhat. And then if she I would not have had the whole stabbing thing in the middle of the street. It could have been an assassination attempt, but she was not stupid about it. And maybe she gets a little bit injured, but she finds, because she finds a way to heal herself via, I don't know, they also teach her about herbs and stuff. And then when she kills the waif, she goes to Jaqen, and Jaqen is like, oh yeah, well, you've completed your training. Now go and perform our ultimate task. And the ultimate task, Arya doesn't really know, but it would be the killing of Cersei. And that's when we find out that Jaqen Hagar is actually in cahoots with Varys. What? Yes, you guys remember, like way back in the day, back all the way back to season 1, we first see Jack and Hagar, the original Faceless Men. We see that guy. He's being transported to the Wall. Now, that means that he was a prisoner in King's Landing, and he's being transported to the Wall. So, if you guys remember, who's the guy who could move around the castle like nothing? Who went and visited Ned Stark in the dungeons? It was Varys. So, Jaqen was always a Varys agent, and he still has a mission, but they are in cahoots. So now, still in cahoots, still Varys and Jaqen in cahoots. Now they're sending Arya back to Westeros, trained as a killer, to finish off her list. And guess who's on that list? Every single person on that list is an enemy of Daenerys. So that was a play by Varys. And if you guys are keeping score right now, that means that Littlefinger has one of the Stark girls, and Varys has the other Stark girl. So those two are still way in the game. I hate it in the show that they didn't use them for nothing. Here, they're still pretty much in the game. They're still the puppet masters. They're still doing their thing. Anyway, that would be Arya. That would be Arya's storyline up to that point, which is where Season 6 ends. And let's move on to the rest of the world. Now, a thing that always bugged me is how they used Euron. And I hated the fact that Euron went after Cersei. Euron is probably the most evil character in the books so far that we know of. Because, like I've said before, nobody really knows what Littlefinger's doing. And nobody really knows what Euron's doing either. But the things that he's done are evil. I mentioned this before. I think it was all the way back to my very first podcast. Euron raped and tortured his brothers. And that's barely in his evil highlight reel. Barely in his evil highlight reel. I'm sorry, I'm still having an aneurysm. So, the dude's bad. He's a bad dude. Anyway, one thing I never really understood is why Euron went after Cersei instead of Daenerys. Like, Cersei was in a way weaker position than Daenerys was. Cersei is also way older than Daenerys was. So, if you're a king and search for a queen, you would think you'd go after the younger chick that has 3 dragons, right? I mean, I don't know about you, but that's what I would do. Like, yes, I'm humbly saying that I would have gone with that decision, okay? And I hate fucking Daenerys. But anyway, I still would have done it because it's a smarter choice. So, the thing that I would have done differently is that Euron takes the Iron Fleet and they sail off to Meereen to get Daenerys. Or, if they're not able to get Daenerys, at least to try to steal a dragon, right? Because they didn't put this in the show, so I'm not going to put it in. There was a thing about a horn that could control dragons, but it kills the user, and you don't really know if it's going to work because nobody's really tried using it with a dragon. So I'm going to keep that out. However, it's a fun storyline in the books. I highly recommend that. Anyway, so he's going after Daenerys, and he's trying to possibly take a dragon, not with a horn, but there is a story. There's a thing that you could do called nettling a dragon, and there's a story in the Game of Thrones lore of a girl named Nettles who managed to nettle a dragon. And, nettling became a verb because of her. What she did was basically she offered a dragon a whole bunch of food, and so the dragon was so distracted eating that she was able to ride it. And therefore, they kind of forged a psychic bond. However, there's more to the story, but that's pretty much it, and that's called nettling a dragon. So, Euron is a man of the world. He probably heard that story, and he's like, you know what, maybe I could risk it. Or he thinks he could. The point is, he thinks he can walk out of there with either the Dragon Queen or a dragon. So, he's on his way to Meereen with the Iron Fleet. Now, I've always said that the pairing of Euron and Daenerys would be way more interesting than her and Jon, and because of than Euron and Cersei, because, and I know I've gotten a lot of hate for this. I don't care, because think about it. Euron is exactly Daenerys' type. Think about, what words would you use to describe Euron Greyjoy? Vicious, sadistic, leader. right? Like those three, you think those three apply to Euron Greyjoy? Well, those three also apply to two other dudes, Khal Drogo and Dario Naharis. So, if you think about it for a second, it makes sense. Euron Greyjoy is exactly Daenerys' type. So much so that there's a theory going on amongst book readers that Euron Greyjoy and Dario Naharis are actually the same character in disguise. I don't subscribe to that story, but they are eerily similar. There's a lot of similarities there, and a lot of the timelines kind of, some match up, some don't. So all I'm saying is that Euron Greyjoy with Daenerys seems a lot more likely than anything else. Or Euron Greyjoy going after fucking Cersei, which makes no fucking sense. Anyway, so that's what Euron would be doing. He won the King's Moot. Yara left, and he's like, oh, well, I could go after Yara, or I could go after the Dragon Queen and conquer the world. So he goes after Daenerys, who's in Meereen. Now, to finish off the rest of Westeros before I get into Dany. Now, Dany's story kind of affects the rest of Westeros because she supposedly has the alliance of the Reach and Dorne, right? So by the Reach, I mean the Tyrells. She has the Tyrells on her side, and the Dornish decide to be on her side. Now, for the Dornish, the storyline doesn't make any fucking sense because they killed off the Martells, and suddenly the Sand Snakes take power. Like, imagine you are the king of something, and all of a sudden, your little brother's ex-girlfriend ends up taking control, right? Your kid brother's ex-girlfriend ends up taking control of the kingdom after you die. Like, that's not how that works. But let's assume that the coup was big enough and that they had enough support from the whole Dornish kingdom to take over control, right? Let's assume that. Okay. Now, the big issue here is that the Reachmen hate the Dornish, and vice versa. Those two have been at war since forever. They've been fighting over because their lands connect. The Reach, it does connect with Dorne, and they've been fighting in that border forever. They loathe each other. Now, I could see how the hatred of the Sand Snakes for the Lannisters and the hatred from Olenna Tyrell to the Lannisters might kind of bring those two families together. However, the entire region, I don't think so. The entire kingdom, I don't think so. So, their alliance towards, or their preference for Dany is tentative at best, okay? Tentative at best. They're still kind of at each other's throats. It's like, all right, I don't like you, but I'll see where this goes, and it's a wait-and-see type of deal. So, even though Varys worked his magic with his web of spies and managed to create a tentative alliance, there's still a lot of tension there, and there's a lot of potential for infighting. It's not one big, cohesive unit. Daenerys doesn't have, like, a solid foothold there yet. So, that will be Westeros. Let's move on to Daenerys, because the Daenerys storyline is kind of a clusterfuck, and it affects kind of everybody. So, I've had a lot of issues with Daenerys over the years, but I'll just stick to what happened in Season 6. And I've always said, because if you guys remember, Season 6, Daenerys starts off as a prisoner of the Dothraki. Now, I've always said that Daenerys should have been raped into Kingdom Come, right? Because that's what the Dothraki do. Dothraki kill and rape people. It's kind of their thing. So, you're telling me that a bunch of Dothraki screamers found a beautiful girl out in the middle of the plains, and they decided, and by the way, she did not say who she was until she was presented to the cows. So you're telling me that none of the fucking soldiers whose hobby is to rape and kill people, not one of them touched her. Not a single one. I do not believe it. So the only way that would have made sense for me is if that, okay, because in the books, that's in the books, that's how we leave Daenerys. We don't know what happens to her after that. She's right next to Drogo. She's in the middle of the plains, and she has diarrhea, so she's sick. So if you want to make it so that when the Dothraki find her, she's right next to Drogo, and and so the Dothraki are like, oh shit, what do we do? It's kind of like a stare down, like, well, we want to take her, but there's a fucking dragon right there, so what the fuck do we do? Can we take it? No. Can we risk it? No. So it's kind of like a stare down. And so if Daenerys says, I'm Khaleesi. I am the Khaleesi of Drogo. Blah blah blah. I'm the widow of Khal Drogo. Take me to your leaders, whatever. And then collapses from her sickness because she was sick. Then she passes out. Then and her calming Drogo down before anything escalates. Then I could kind of believe a little bit more that the Dothraki would take them because now they know she's a Khaleesi, right? They know who she is. She's not just a Khaleesi. She's a particularly famous Khaleesi. So they would take her, and they would take her to the leaders, and while she's healing, or while they're trying to heal her, they take her all the way back to Vaes Dothrak. That's how I would have ended her story at that point, and then I would have had that season. She's just spends it or on the way to Vaes Dothrak. Once she's there, she kind of tries to rally people into joining what her venture across the seas. She doesn't just burn the whole thing about burning the building. Because if you guys remember, Daenerys, once she arrives to Vaes Dothrak, which is the holy city of the Dothraki, she basically kills all the cows by setting the building that she's in on fire. That doesn't make any sense. And there's a great video about it, about what doesn't make any sense. But I can break it down for you really quickly. A, she did not know that she was not going to be burned alive. B, those dudes were like the greatest warriors in their fucking people amongst all the Dothraki. So any one of them could have just killed her as soon as she dropped the first brasser. Also, the walls were made out of wood, so they could have just broken one of the walls or window and gotten out. Also, wood does not set on fire that fast. I don't care what you're throwing, what you're throwing down on it. It does not set on fire that fast. So the thing is that the plan was really stupid. Okay? Her plan was really stupid. So, the way that you make it less stupid is if you would have found a way for Daenerys to earn it. So she's in Vaes Dothrak. That's where all the Khaleesi's go after their cows die, right? And they're trying to force her to stay there. She doesn't really know where Drogon is at this point. So they're kind of trying to teach her about their ways, what she's supposed to do, her duties from now on. But she's like, no, I need to go out and conquer. So if one of the Khaleesi's helps her with her psychic link, because the thing, and they said that there was a line on the show that they cut out that, the reason why Daenerys can direct Drogo is because it's almost like he can tell what she's thinking. So they have a psychic link. I don't know why they deleted the line from the show. I guess it was too on the nose, but it doesn't really matter. Honestly, at this point, it doesn't really matter. So I would have made it so that one of the Khaleesi's there would have helped Daenerys discover her psychic bond via like a horse link. So that the Khaleesi, the former Khaleesi, she's saying like, oh no, like she has the greatest rider of them all. She has a bond with the horse, and it's a type of bond. So if you want to be the horse that rides the world, which was the prophecy of Daenerys' son was supposed to be the horse that rode the world, you need to have a link with you. You need to have more than a link. You need to be the horse. So Daenerys there discovers how to become she becomes the dragon, and she finally accepts her psychic link with Drogo, and that's how she gets Drogo to come to her. And that's how they said, it's not that she burns a stupid building up, it's via her link with Drogo. She kind of like a warg in a way. She burns all the cows alive, and everybody's like, oh shit, this bitch rides a dragon. And so they're like, okay, well, I mean, we usually follow the best rider here, or the best warriors, and I don't think any of our horses compare to a dragon, so we'll follow you. And that's how she gets the Dothraki to follow her. It's that she earns it via the link with Drogo. She has to dig deep down, and the problem with psychic links is, and this is explained somewhat in the books, hinted at least, is that if your creature is more powerful than you are, they will take over you. A good example of this is the Starks and their direwolves. Now, in the books, the wildest of all the dogs is Shaggy Dog, which is Rickon Stark's dog. And Rickon is also a very wild child. He has a lot of issues with the parents leaving. He's sometimes he's described as feral. Again, this is not really shown in the show because nobody really cares about Rickon in the show. But it's shown that the wolf personality is taking over, and the aggressiveness has affected the kid. Now think of Sansa's direwolf lady. She was proper. She was very much like Sansa. Nymeria, on the other hand, she was also a little bit wilder, like Arya. So all the wolves have the personalities of the Stark kids, except Rickon. Rickon has the personality of a wild wolf. Why? Because if your beast is more powerful than you are, and a direwolf was more powerful than a little kid, they could kind of take over. So, the thing that kind of... A dragon is way more powerful than Daenerys. So Daenerys needs to find a way to either not be afraid or just to learn how to dominate Drogo, because otherwise Drogo will dominate her, and that will drive her to madness. If Drogo takes over the personality of Daenerys, that's when she might become mad. All right? And so far there have been hints of her being mad already. And by hints, I mean total fucking evidence that she's batshit crazy. Or at least not a nice person. And it could be because of the influence of the dragon on her. But that's the way I would have handled it. It's not like just... Because I hated that she just, out of nowhere, the dragon started listening to her. All of them. I thought it was stupid. It was the stupidest thing ever. I hated that Daenerys got everything handed to her. So at least that way, Daenerys is special. Nobody can deny that Daenerys is special. So at least this way, she had to earn it. She had to risk being taken over by Drogo and managing to overcome him to be able to control him up to a point, and that's how she defeated the cows. So it makes a little bit more sense. That's why all the Dothraki are like, yep, we'll follow you. You're riding a dragon. Makes sense. So that's how I would have handled that. I still would have kept the adventure of the Super Dario brothers, which is Dario Naharis and Jorah Mormont trying to go and find Daenerys and try to rescue her. The story for those two doesn't really have to change up to that point, but I'll reach the other side once I do it. So Dario Naharis, Jorah Mormont, they find Daenerys. Daenerys calls on Drogo, manages to take over Drogo, and she burns the leaders of the cow, the cows who opposed her, and she takes over everybody, and she's on her way back to Meereen. Now, if you guys remember, at this point, Meereen was being directed by, it was under Tyrion's control and Grey Worm's control, and it was also being attacked by the slavers of the other cities that they attacked before, Yunkai and Astapor. So they're under siege. They're on the siege by the sea, and they're under siege by land. So in order to stop that from continuing, Tyrion does release the dragons, Viserion and Rhaegal, who were being kept, in the dungeons of the palace. So he releases them, and the dragons kind of just fly off and do whatever the fuck they want. What they do is they start just burning pretty much whatever's on their way. So they do burn a few of the ships that was attacking them, and they do burn some of the soldiers from the other spot, but they also burn some of the buildings inside of Astapor, and they burn one of the pyramids and decide that that's their nest. So the dragons are like, F you dudes, this is my house now. And so they're causing a little bit of chaos inside. However, their presence there did freak out the people who were sieging them. They're like, holy shit, they got dragons, and they burned a couple of our ships. Yeah, but didn't they burn them too? On the other side, did we see that? Like, yeah, but we can't fucking risk it because they can turn around and just shoot and then just burn us alive. Also, what's the point of capturing a city that's under siege by dragons? You kind of don't want to live there. But what if they take control of the dragons? So it's a debate that they're having, and that pushes them into, okay, we're willing to negotiate a little, right? And that's when Daenerys would return in the middle of the night, and she would, chastise Tyrion because of some dumb reason, because she's stupid. Tyrion did nothing wrong, literally. Daenerys left them to die in an arena after Drogo saved her and nobody else, and she still came back and pissed off and yelled at Tyrion. Ridiculous. But anyway, let's assume she comes back, and she's like, okay, well, let's kill these bastards, because she knows that she's got an army of Dothraki screamers following her. They're about to get there, and she's got Drogo. So the biggest fear that anybody has on a ship is anything being set on fire. That's their biggest fear. If you're on a ship, the thing you're most afraid of is fire. That is a fact. So first off, Drogo has some kind of a chain or a rope or something around his neck. Ideally, he would have a saddle, and I'm guessing that Dothraki could fashion one. But if it was short notice, let's assume that he just at least has a rope, something for Daenerys to grab hold of. something, literally anything besides just her sitting there grabbing onto a spike. Or what is it? No, it's not a horn. What is that? Scale. Well, something for her to hold on to. Something. Okay? Anyway, so she gets on Drogo and they start setting all the ships ablaze, which makes all the ships that are sieging them go like, fuck this, man. We're being attacked by a dragon. Let's leave. We can't beat a fucking dragon because, again, fire and ships made out of wood. Not a good mix. And while that is happening, the Iron Fleet shows up, and they just completely start destroying everybody. So on one side, you got Drogo burning you up, and so you're trying to flee, and where you're trying to flee, you're heading straight into the Iron Fleet. That's just turning you into ceviche. So, bad position for them. For all the armies on the outside, they got the Unsullied on one end attacking them from the walls, and from the rear, they get attacked by the Dothraki, so they get decimated as well. So it's a resounding victory for Daenerys, right? Except now she's got the Iron Fleet at her door. And she's like, who the fuck are these dudes? And she's got a couple of feral dragons inside. So what she tries to do first is she tries to she goes back to the castle, goes to the pyramid, and she tries to, well, not confront, but try to appease Viserion and Rhaegal. But they're not having it. It's like, imagine if your mom put you on timeout for no reason. Like, if your brother fucked up and your mom punishes you for months, right? Like, Ma, I didn't do anything wrong, but shut the fuck up. I'm going to lock you up in the basement for months. But what did I do? Nothing. Your brother did it. Like, the fuck? So the point is they were pissed and they were not happy at her. And so when Daenerys tries to, get closer to them, they snap at her and that pisses Drogo off. So Drogo kind of like snaps at them. And Rhaegal and Viserion are like, fuck this, I'm out. I can't take fucking Drogo, because Drogo was supposed to be way bigger than the other two, especially because he was out in the world hunting and eating whatever he wanted, while these two were being imprisoned and kind of malnourished. So the point is, Drogo snaps at them, and these two are like, fuck this, and they leave. So Daenerys is left with only one dragon, the best dragon, the most powerful dragon, and now it's kind of under her control. But still, she doesn't have 3 fucking dragons. So that's a way of nerfing her a little, right? She's nerfed a little, and now she has to deal with the Ironborn. So, Euron Greyjoy just showed up, kind of saved her butt in a way. Not necessarily. I mean, you could have made it more dramatic, like the ships were actually about to get Drogo or whatever, or that there was actually a chance that they might hurt him. But the Iron Fleet came in, and it guaranteed victory, and it guaranteed the destruction of the enemy army, which is the bigger thing. It's like, they're not going to attack again because they cannot get away. So, now Euron shows up, and they're trying to negotiate, and Euron is like, well, I want a fucking queen. So, I'll help you conquer. I have the ships to take. You have 100,000 Dothraki screamers over here. You have your Unsullied. But your dragon's not going to carry them one by one. I have 1,000 ships. I'm willing to carry your army together to Westeros, and we can conquer together. So, Daenerys would have had to have taken that deal. She would have had to take. She could have taken one or two, made one or two conditions, like, all right, fine, we'll marry after this, but at least be engaged. So Euron and Daenerys are engaged. And now, here's the story with Dario Naharis. Makes a little bit more sense of why he has to stay behind. So Daenerys leaves Dario Naharis to run Meereen because she definitely cannot take her lover to Westeros if she's already engaged to marry Euron Greyjoy, right? She cannot. However, this brings up a few complications for Daenerys. The problem is that at the end of season 6, Daenerys had too much power. She had she had Theon and Yara's Ironborn. She had the Tyrells, and she had the Martells. She had Dorne, the Reach, and half of the Ironborn, and 3 dragons. Now, she only has 1 dragon. She has the Iron Fleet, and she has the Tyrells and the Martells. 3 groups who hate each other, right? And the only thing that these 3 hate more than the Lannisters, because those 3 hate the Lannisters, right? The Greyjoys hate the Lannisters, Tyrells hate the Lannisters, Martells hate the Lannisters. So you would think that hatred or that ambition would be enough to be like, all right, fine, we'll work together. However, the only thing that these three hate more than the Lannisters is the Dothraki. And maybe the Unsullied. The Unsullied, not so much, but the Dothraki for sure. Okay? So, what happens here is it's a tentative alliance. And that's probably one of the things that Daenerys could have leveraged into only making it like a betrothal or an engagement. Because, those two are different. Like, totally making it an engagement. And it's because she's heard of Euron Greyjoy's reputation and she doesn't really like what she hears. And Euron is not really in a position to fight her at that point because, again, ships against a dragon, not a good idea. 100,000 Dothraki screamers, not a good idea to face those. So he knows that he's kind of in a disadvantage militaristically speaking. However, he's at the advantage that Daenerys needs him. So they kind of both leverage out they both flex their muscles and they compromise on solely the engagement, right? Also, Euron is a cocky guy. He's sure he's going to conquer her. He's sure that he's going to win her over with his pirate charms, right? So that would be it. They end up sailing on their way to Westeros. However, they won't head towards Dragonstone because Dragonstone is currently held by the Lannisters. They will go somewhere else. But that is it for now. I think I got everybody. Let me just do a quick recap on the characters I did this time. So we would have seen Arya actually be trained as a faceless man in a way that makes sense. They explained how being a faceless man works. And she, at the end of the season, is unleashed onto Westeros to go and continue her list. Then we discover that Jack and Hagar and the House of Black and White are in, maybe not the House of Black and White, but at least Jack and Hagar are in cahoots with Varys. Not necessarily Daenerys, but Varys for sure. Right? So, we got that one out of the way. That's Arya. Next, we have Euron, who is on his way, who went to Meereen, helped kill off the fleet that was attacking Daenerys. Then he offers Daenerys transportation back to Westeros in exchange of her hand in marriage. Daenerys is forced to accept because she needs ships and because she needs allies in Westeros too. Now, the Tyrells and the Martells are in a tentative alliance with each other with Daenerys, but there's tensions beneath the water. There's a lot of tensions going on with all of Daenerys' allies. Okay, nobody really likes each other. So Daenerys does not come out to Westeros super powerful. She has her Dothrakis and she has her Unsullied, but still everybody else in her alliance kind of hates each other. So there's potential for a lot of infighting there, a lot of chaos there. And also, two of her dragons kind of just fled. She only really has Drogon. Okay? And that, I think, I forgot. Dario Naharis gets left behind in Meereen to run things and create. But that was one of the dumbest things that they did on the show, to leave Dario Naharis behind. And the way that they did it. It's like, no, I think you'll be a good leader, blah, blah, blah. Dario Naharis is the guy who literally said, fuck Meereen. Fuck the people. Like, those words came out of his mouth. And Daenerys is like, you know what, this guy, he'll do a good job. But if Daenerys knows that the area is still technically in conflict and she needs somebody to be her vessel over there who could make militaristic decisions and still be like a hard hand with everybody, and it's also kind of like a decent price, I can't marry you, but you will be the governor of Meereen. You will be my vessel. I guess it would be a way to appease him somewhat. But who knows? This is probably not the end. Not the last time that we see Dario Naharis in the story. Or is it? Maybe. I don't know. Yes, such a great name. I'm sorry. I love the guy. He's the best. Anyway, who's next? Jorah Mormont. His story pretty much stays the same. He tries to go and rescue Daenerys, but turns out that Daenerys rescued herself with Drogo's help. And so Daenerys sends him off to try to find a cure to an uncurable disease. Basically, Daenerys says, like, you know what, just kind of get the fuck away from me. I don't want to get sick. And that's it. I think that's everybody. I think they got everybody. So, and Daenerys' story would be that when she's taken by the Dothraki, it kind of makes sense why she didn't get raped till Kingdom Come. And the way that she kills off all the Khals and takes control of the Khalasar is due to her forging her psychic link with Drogon. And that's pretty much it. That's where everybody is. So that's it for the setup. Everything from here on will be new. So that would be the end of Season 6. Season 7 forward, completely new shit. So I hope you look forward to that. I will try to keep it as clean as possible. I may focus on certain areas in certain particular times. I'm still not exactly sure how I'm going to do this. The story's still too complicated. I killed off a lot of stuff, or not really killed off, but I let a lot of stuff die, a lot of storylines die, and it's still very hard to keep things kind of focused. Because, I mean, this show lends to chaos, and I love chaos. But I want to keep it in a way that it makes sense for the people listening. So that's it for today. That's it for this week in the Rewriting Game of Thrones. I will continue again next Monday. The setup is done, people. The board is set. You know where everybody is. And like I said, everybody pretty much ends up in the same spot that they did at the end of Season 6. However, now it makes a little bit more sense. Hopefully you agree. Let me know. Comments, questions, suggestions at Dario the Show on Instagram. You can always find me there. Please let me know what you're thinking of the series so far. I want to know if I'm fucking up or if it's still making sense. If you're like, dude, this is actually kind of cool or not. Honestly, that's just my ego. A part of me wants to hear like, yeah, this actually makes a lot more sense. It would have been a lot better. They should have hired you. I agree. But anyway. Tomorrow, as I promised, I will be doing highlights of E3. I'll keep it short and sweet. And on Wednesday, I'll do my usual Super Dario news where I do a recap of all, because I missed a lot of news. I barely touched on any newsworthy stuff from last week. So I got a lot of catching up to do. But first, let's close off E3 tomorrow. And Wednesday, Super Dario news. So I hope you look forward to that. And as always, thank you for listening, and I'll see you again tomorrow.